Okay. Welcome everyone. Really happy to see all of you. We're going to start with some breathing. I found a new GIF that's pretty good. I can reset it. So we're going to start breathing at the top, and then you're going to hold, breathe out, and then hold again. All right, here we go. We're going to do two together. Breathe in. All right. So this week we are going to be talking about conflict resolution and how you can support your kids at home. But before we do that, I want to take some time to think about how you and me as well, all of us as adults, resolve conflicts within our own vicinity. And I'm doing this with a reason, and I'll get to that on the next slide. So how do you resolve conflicts at work? Perhaps if you have a lot of people underneath you, or you're a leader in your workplace, how do you resolve conflict with people that are in your workplace, or as a business partner, or maybe with your own partner at home? How do you resolve conflicts like miscommunication, or maybe a small conflict or misunderstanding? Conflicts with your family, perhaps your parents or your siblings, and then with your own children. If there is something that happens, how do you resolve conflicts with them? Conflict resolution is actually, when I think about it, is so complicated. And I do not feel that this picture that I'm putting up does justice just to how complicated conflict resolution can be. Communication skills, and then all those little words that talk about how the different skills involved in communication. Empathy, again, all those different words that are involved. Compassion, compromise, self-regulation. And all of these combined are always at play when we are trying to resolve a conflict. And so I often look at kids and I just want to say, just talk it out, just talk it out. And oftentimes it's, yeah, talking it out is the outcome of trying to resolve that conflict. But again, there are all these different layers that are involved below that we need to think about, that involves trying to resolve a conflict. And so what I'm going to try doing for today's session is to try tying in what Chris shared about zones and size of problems before, and then give a little bit of tip, just because we don't have that much time and this topic is actually so broad. And having said that, I'm going to go right into zones of regulation. If you haven't listened to this session yet, there is a recording that is available, and so you can go and check that out. But zones of regulation is a great tool, especially for conflict resolution, because it helps kids and adults recognize what state of emotion they are in when they are faced in a difficult situation. And so the first step to zones are always to be able to recognize, oh, you know what, I'm in the blue zone, I'm tired, I'm down, or, you know, that happened and I'm feeling angry, I'm panicked, I'm screaming, I'm in the red zone. The power with zones is to be able to pair that recognition with a type of tool that they can use to disengage from that situation. So if you're in the red zone, maybe that's taking deep breaths, hugging someone, and there are these different tools to help. And so zones of regulation is a great tool. Last week, Chris talked about the size of problems. And when you're faced with a conflict situation, the size of problem helps us recognize the different types of problem sizes, and then pairing it with the different reaction sizes. So if it's a small problem, then probably a small reaction needs to follow, not a huge reaction. I'm going to try tying all of these together, so I'm just doing a quick recap, everyone. This week, I'm going to try introducing a new topic very briefly, which is Kelso's choice. And a lot of counselors are familiar with this. Not a lot of counselors use Kelso's choices, and a lot of schools are also familiar and use Kelso's choices. So some of you might be like, oh, I know Kelso's choices. And it's basically 9 different strategies that children can use and they have to try too before they come and seek an adult's help. I personally, I love Kelso's choices in the fact that there is a message behind Kelso's choice, which is to have and build agency in the children to take ownership of a situation that they are faced with. And if you can take a look very quickly, all of these different strategies that they can try are things that can be commonly used in a classroom setting or during recess. And so I'm just pointing that out there. So how can all of these things help you? And I'm going to try tying all of these things now. The first thing is to build a common language, and size of problems, zones of regulation, and Kelso's choice are some of the things that we're already using at UNIS. And so you can start building that common language to communicate with your child. So if that's a size of a problem, you can ask your child, well, that sounds like a medium-sized problem. Or you can start encouraging and ask questions about that. Oh, what's the size of that problem? Zones of regulation. This is something that we are actively using. And so that would put me in a red zone. Or you could facilitate that and be like, oh, what zone are you in? Oh, you're in the red zone. What could you have done? And then try to prompt those different strategies that they could use to help them self-regulate. And then Kelso's choice as well. I did a lesson on conflict resolution, and a lot of the upper elementary students already knew a lot of the Kelso's choices. And so trying to look at the chart and then pointing out the different strategies as well. Conflict resolution, reflect, model, and practice. So I actually thought about different avenues that I could share with you. And so I came up with reflect, which I thought would be a very good tool to have. And reflect is taking the time to talk about events after they happened. And so in one of the sessions before, we talked about guided storytelling. And so this is another great tool to talk about situations after that they've happened, and you are facilitating and guiding your child in that situation and through that scenario. So what happened during recess at school? You were playing by the seesaw, and then your child will be able to fill in those responses. And you can pair that with zones of regulation. Oh, that must have put you in a red zone. Or you could just ask, what zone were you in when that happened? And then you can start gauging and pairing that with size of problems and size of reaction and reflecting on what happened. And reflecting is just a powerful tool to be able to look back and think about and process the things that have happened already. And modeling and consistency is key, right? There was a book that I shared, A Child Soaks Up Everything. And you are their best teacher. They will look to you, and they will follow and model the things that you are showing as well. So if your child witnessed a conflict, talk to them about it after, especially if you were on the phone and you were feeling agitated and maybe you got heated up in a heated conversation with someone. Talk to your child if you know that they were in the room with you. What happened? What did you do? What could have been done differently? And then you can also model for your children with I messages. I feel messages are something that we try to encourage children to do because it redirects blame and focuses on the behavior and feelings that happen. So instead of saying like, you took that pen from me and that made me upset, or you could start by saying, I felt hurt when you took that pen from me because it felt like you weren't listening to me. So focusing on the feeling and helping redirect the blame and pointing fingers at someone. And you can start modeling that with your child. And then the final one, role playing and practicing. If you know your child struggles with sharing toys, taking turns and whatnot, you can create scenarios and do walkthroughs and start practicing with them at home, thinking about us coming back to school face to face. I know, and I can imagine a lot of kids trying to cope with being with other kids again. And so if you know that your kid struggles with a specific, I don't know, I want to say thing, such as sharing something, you can start practicing that with your child and start creating scenarios. You could use little dinosaurs, or you could act and do live action role play and take turns on being who plays what role and walk them through. And then create a toolbox to use at home. So you could use a zone chart that I showed you before, or you could do popsicle sticks to talk about different strategies and tips. So if your child has siblings, or if you have many kids in the house, you can start writing different strategies and tools that they could try at home. So you could try like writing, take deep breaths. So if your child is having conflict, and you can say, well, take a popsicle stick and let's see what it says, and give them a little bit of agency and control over that situation. So going back, yeah, that was a lot. And maybe we just need to take a deep breath. Chris, was that too fast? I think I'm okay. And so going back, conflict resolution is just so multi-layered in terms of the different strategies, tools, and skills that are needed. And so it's not a one-stop shop that everything works. I like to think about our own journeys and how we have had to experience a lot of pains and struggles to learn the effective conflict resolution skills that we've built and we have today. I like to end with Calvin and Hobbes, and I'll just give everyone a minute to read through that. After working as a counselor with many kids and helping kids, process a lot of situations where they've had conflicts, I've come to get the feeling that a lot of kids, it's a cry out for attention, that they're hurting and they're trying to resolve that hurt in some ways. And so I thought this comic strip did a good job of recognizing that and not trying to minimize the feelings that the kids are going through. So until we meet again, here are some homework, goals, and intentions that I'm leaving with you. Try to recreate 2 conflict-related scenarios at school and role play with your child. I don't know why there's a question mark there. And then you could take turns and play both parts, play both roles. What could they do? What could they say? Especially if they feel like, this might happen, or if this is something that they've struggled with, you could try bringing those scenarios out and role playing that with your child. I've attached 2 resources here, and you can learn more about Kelso's choices. And then there's some tips and strategies from ChildMind here that go into more details and covers some of the strategies that I've also talked about today as well. Are there any questions?